Okay, this is the introduction on the Cold War simulation. So for the most part, we have several groups, the teacher and the accountant. The teacher is playing the role of military as well as treaty, any sort of treaty issue that is outside of the directions. We have the accountants. The accountants are going to split the room up. Accountant 1 on the left side will deal with the groups on the left side, and accountant 2 will deal with students on the right side. So when we look at the groups, what we see are some letters. D is for diplomat, the P is for the president, and the S is for Secretary of State. So those are the various roles. Now keep in mind the president should not leave the group because somebody needs to physically be at the group to negotiate. So during class, the president should always be at the group. There should always be at least one person. That person should always be the president. So the president's responsibility is to negotiate with the Secretary of State or the diplomat. What are they negotiating? Everything and anything. Anything in the directions, anything outside of the directions. However, anything outside of the directions need to be confirmed with the teacher to figure out what constraints are going to be, need to be completed in order to achieve whatever goal you're trying to accomplish. The president is also responsible at the end for standing up and issuing their State of the Union address to everybody else in the class. That's the president's responsibility. As far as the diplomat is the one who is leaving to negotiate with other groups and to get treaties signed. Keep in mind, each group starts off with a certain amount of money, 10, 6, 5, maybe they have 0, they have 1. And eventually you are going to run out of money because in each round you have to have a health and a food card, which you purchase from the accountants. So the accountants are the ones selling the health and food cards, and they have a cost every round of $1. So the question now is probably, well, how do we get money when we run out? And you get money by signing treaties. This form right here. The following two nations, blank and blank, agree to establish and maintain a treaty. Notice how we have an area for both parties to sign. And we want to identify that it's Alpha and Bravo creating a treaty. So these treaties have a value. So let's just say, for example, this group started out with 0, and it's round 1. Let's go to round 2. If at the end of the round they have 4 of those treaties, they have to drop their treaties to the accountant. The accountant, while the State of the Union speech is going on, he or she will take those treaties, in this case it was 4, and crumble them, toss them in the trash, and then replace each treaty with a dollar amount based on whatever round the treaty value is. So if there's 4 and the treaty value is 2, during the State of the Union speech, as I said, those 4 treaties will be thrown into the wastebasket, and then they will be replaced with money. So when the next round begins, round 2, that particular group has $8 waiting at the accountant. They should then go to the accountant to collect their money and then pay for 1 more health and 1 more food card, which would mean that they are probably going to leave with $6, but they did leave a health and food card. So what do I mean by that? I'm going to now move on to the next item, which is this sheet. If you are one of the accountants, each group should have a card. So this could be your desk, and this person is responsible for 3 groups, A, B, C. And it's as simple as during the round, the Secretary of State, as I said, takes the treaties and just physically drops the sheet on the accountant's desk. And then they have to also make sure that at the end of the round, there is a health and food card. So at the end of the round, it should look like this. So here we see Alpha, here we see Bravo. And so we would see, each group has 1 sheet of paper for the accountant. And the accountant, we see 3 treaties, make sure they're all signed. We see a health card and a food card. So at the end of the round, while State of the Union speeches are being given, these treaties will be thrown out and then replaced with $2 for each treaty. So they will now have 6. their health and food cards will not be thrown in the garbage. They will just be removed from the sheet, because at the end of the round, or State of the Union speeches, the official end of the round, the Secretary of State needs to go back to their accountant and say, hey, I need my money. Oh, and by the way, I would like to buy a new health or food card. You can also get health and food cards from other group members. There's some groups have more than one health and food card from the start, so you could possibly buy them from an ally or somebody out there. So now here we see Alpha and Bravo. So we see that there are only 2 treaties, so they would get paid $4, and they only have a food card, which means they have a health card. If at the end of a round you do not have a health or a food card, or you're missing both, this sets off a humanitarian crisis, and that group will sit out, and then the UN president will be in a position where the UN president is not living up to the charter, which is something that I will address later. For the most part, State of the Union speeches, at the end of the round, when we have those speeches, that is when the United Nations wants to figure out, resolutions to try to make sure that sides are, maintaining and living up to the charter of the United Nations. So if they're not doing that, that is going to be problematic. So another side note here, each group is going to have treaties, and each group will start with a different amount of cards, and you will be playing for these various cards. There are more than the ones that are here. These are industrial receipts for anybody trying to buy any sort of weapons, which will be addressed later on in another screencast. But for the most part, when we're looking at the directions, we see the roles that are here outlining what you can do. These are the items that are up for sale that you can purchase. And then this explains how to make money. And I usually don't want to give away too much too many examples, because the directions, I expand on the directions every year, because these are things that students come up with. Like one year, a group wanted to poison the food and water supply. I had never thought of that. So they had come up to me in secret, said, this is what we would like to do. And then I came up with the constraints, told them how they would do it. And then they just started poisoning, other groups. I do not recommend this, because how will that play out? Let's say that this group poisons this group's water supply and their food source. That is going to set off a humanitarian crisis. And at that point, I will say that the class is not living up to the United Nations Charter, because the United Nations Charter, you have to make sure that you are conducting the class in a way where we are promoting United Nations values, which are outlined here. That you're trying to prevent war, reaffirm faith and fundamental human rights. Like, I don't know how poisoning somebody else doesn't, qualifies for this. So let's just say that Alpha poisoned Bravo. That's going to be a violation. The class will then get a negative, and then the UN president has to figure out a resolution to try to prevent stuff like that from happening. And a crisis can emerge. Like I said, if a group doesn't have a health card or a food card, that can trigger a humanitarian crisis. Not following treaties, any of those items can count. That's pretty much the basics for this screencast. There'll be another one for fighting war, building weapons, as well as United Nations responsibility. But like I said, for the most part, president stays in the group. The diplomat leaves to negotiate one of those treaties, gives the treaty, if signed by both parties, to the diplomat. The diplomat then reports to their accountant to drop off the treaty, as well as to make sure that by the end of the round, they will have a health and food card placed under their sheet of paper. That's pretty much